Welcome to this virtual service of the San Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Georgetown, Texas. We are glad you have joined us this Sunday for our virtual service. My name is Kelly McGinty, and I am one of the board members of San Gabriel UU. For those of you who are not familiar with Unitarian Universalism or with San Gabriel UU, we invite you to look at the information that will be provided after today's Sunday service so that you can make inquiries about us in general, or if you perhaps want to become more involved in our small faith community. We are always happy to have new people come on board and help us achieve our vision and goals for this church. Our service today is centered around one of the 7 principles that guide our faith tradition: a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Reverend Lou Snead is sharing with us today his reflections on these guiding principles. We hope you will find this service to be inspiring and meaningful for you. Thank you so much for being here and joining us.
To light a chalice in the dark, that some may find their way. To act in love, though it be hard, put fear and pride away. To welcome all, to answer need, to search for truth where it may lead, to honor faith with dignity. This is our humble creed. This is our only creed.
Today, I'm inviting you to consider with me for a moment one of the 7 foundational principles that unite all UUs together. The focus for our service today is on the 4th principle, which is the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. This notion, of course, reflects the spiritual voices over the ages who realize the importance and value of establishing truth that can liberate us from self-deception and liberate us from fear. It sets us free. Our own form of democracy is established, we say, on the basis of self-evident truths like life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Even our legal system is based on the notion of truth-telling, that we will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So truth is vital to human relationships, from marriages to business transactions to international diplomacy. But truth, seeking the truth, can be a demanding exercise. For example, today I'm coming to you from this beautiful Thorn Crown Chapel here in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Or am I really? In this age of virtual technology, it's not always easy to tell what's really true. Defining truth itself can often be a slippery matter, like what does love or justice or beauty mean? We hear truth in different contexts. Sometimes we hear people talk about the sad truth or the hard, cold truth. Sometimes we talk about objective truth or even absolute truth. As the philosopher Rene Descartes found long ago in his rigorous intellectual pursuit of the truth, he said, sometimes you have to let go of what you think is true in order to find real truth. Truth is important because it binds us together in common experiences and understanding. It takes some common sense truth, for example. Atlanta is in Georgia, and 2 + 2 = 4. We depend on certain truths that these things are established, they're agreed upon in order to make sense out of life. But when it comes to history and sometimes reality, truth, finding the truth, can be more problematic and demanding because it involves personal experiences. Now, the process of establishing truth has often been defined, whether from courtrooms to laboratories, usually needs 3 components: the interplay of those with reason, evidence, consistency, reliability. The Greeks, of course, knew the value of knowing the truth, they said, because it overcomes ignorance and prejudices and even superstitions. Agreeing, though, on what constitutes the truth has become very problematic today. We are living in this age of misinformation and disinformation. When some people say they don't think their truth is being understood because of fake news, or they have some alternative facts that differs from others. Used to be, truth was established on the basis of authorities like God or the Bible or the Pope or even science. But now we have contested truths that don't agree with those established authorities anymore. And in fact, in this politically divided country today, the lack of truth, shared truth, actually threatens to rip our nation apart in terms of our own shared identities. So what does it mean for us to say that we are about the free and responsible search for truth and meaning? I want to explore that question with you today.
Our affirmation reminds us of who we are together in fellowship and of our sacred covenant to each other. Please join us as we say our affirmation together. The doctrine of this church is love. The quest of truth is its sacraments, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus we do covenants with each other.
Hi, wondering minds. You know how we're always told to tell the truth? Well, I'm wondering, is there ever a time it's okay to lie? I mean, let's think about this. If a classmate wants to get together to have a play date, and maybe this is somebody that you don't have the best of times with, is it okay to make an excuse not to get together? Or let's just say, Mom just got a haircut, and it's not a very good one. You don't want to hurt her feelings. You want to be polite about it. Is it okay to stretch the facts a little bit? Well, these are good questions to discuss during your RE time together. I did bring with me a little box, and it has a device inside, a device that's used for measuring. Got any guesses?
Our Wonder Box contains a meter, much like one of these. Well, let's see what these meters have to do with our story for today. Eli's Liometer, a story about telling the truth, by Sandra Levins, illustrated by Jeff Ebeter. When Eli grows up, he wants to fly. He loves airplanes and rockets. He creates colorful drawings of spaceships, and sometimes he wears swimming goggles and pretends to be the pilot of a fighter jet. He logs hours of flight time with his co-pilot dog, Duffy. Eli's first mate and best friend, Colton, travel through the galaxy on a customized space shuttle. They are strong and brave, and they always make it home in time for dinner. But Eli has a problem. The problem started when the mailman delivered the super deluxe Liometer. It looks like a regular clock, but whenever someone stretches the facts a bit, lights flash, dials spin, and out spits a ticket that shows the level of the truth. Eli knows the difference between pretending and the real facts. Pretending is what he does when he orbits the Earth or battles sea monsters, and the real facts are what actually happen. But sometimes telling the real facts can be hard for Eli, and now that the Liometer is in the house, his problems have just supersized. The Liometer can detect a fib, a lie, a big lie, a giant lie, or a whopper, which is another word for a super duper lie. On Monday, when Dad asked Eli to pick up the building blocks that were scattered on the floor, he immediately replied, "Madison played with them last." Lights flashed, the spinner whirled, and out shot a fib ticket. On Thursday at bedtime, Mom asked Eli if he brushed his teeth. He said yes. The Liometer pickered up and puckered up and sputtered, and a lie ticket stuck out like a tongue. Friday morning, Mom was packing up cupcakes for Madison's preschool class. Did someone eat one of these cupcakes? I'm sure I had 12. Madison shrugged. Eli wiped crumbs off his mouth. Not me. Oh, that lie-o-meter clicked and sighed. Mom picked up a ticket off the floor. Looks like a big lie to me, Eli, she said. Boy, I hope these tickets are recyclable. We're getting quite a pile of them. After that, Eli felt mad. He was sorry he sneaked the cupcake in the first place, unhappy that he lied, and disappointed that he wouldn't get a cupcake after dinner like the rest of the family. Stupid lie-o-meter. On Saturday, Eli and Colton were tossing a football in the living room. Now, Eli knew full well he wasn't supposed to play catch in the house, but Mom was busy in her office, so who would know? Until crash! Mom called out, "What happened, Eli?" Duffy knocked the lamp over?" "Oh, no," said Mom. "Duffy, I love you to pieces, but you need to stay outdoors from now on." At first, Eli was happy that his keep me out of trouble lie seemed to work. It was a whopper, and he couldn't believe that the lie-o-meter didn't catch it. But later that night, he missed Duffy sleeping at the foot of his bed. In the morning, Eli finds Mom and Dad in the kitchen. "Mom, Dad, about the lamp," and he tells them the facts as they really happened. The lie-o-meter nearly explodes as the spinner hits the truth mark and churns out a big, oversized truth ticket. Dad says, "Eli, we understand. No one wants to get in trouble. But by lying, the wrong person or dog may get the blame, and that's not fair." Mom says, "We're really proud of you for thinking about this and speaking up. Your bravery and honesty have been noted. Now, let's try to stick to the facts for the next 100 years or so, okay?" Eli knows that means forever, and he agrees. "Aye, aye, Captain." Mom picks up the truth ticket and finds these words printed on the back. She reads out loud, "Abracadabra, hocus pocus. Make the truth this family's focus." The lie-o-meter makes a terrible grinding noise. A siren blares, lights flash, and the entire face of the meter spins round and round and round. With a final kerplunk, the commotion stops. Eli inches closer, his eyes wide open. "Wow!" exclaims Eli. "The meter changed. How'd it do that?" "Beats me. But I like the truth idea, and I don't think we need a meter for that," says Mom. The end. Roof.
In case you haven't noticed, truth has been under assault here in recent years. Let's start by asking ourselves, what is truth? Well, the dictionary says truth is when established opinions or beliefs or propositions are aligned with the facts, with what we all can agree upon. That's sometimes very easy, that Atlanta is in the state of Georgia, or 2 + 2 = 4, with our common sense agreement. Yes, those are true statements. But when it comes to our own personal experiences or our own views of reality, truth becomes much more difficult, a little more slippery, a little more contentious. We're here near Austin, and of course, in Austin, we have a lot of different viewpoints. Some of us can remember the tragic killing of the children and teachers at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut several years ago, when a gunman went in and murdered all of those children and teachers. It made great national news. It shocked the nation. But here in Austin, Alex Jones in InfoWars has been contending ever since that tragedy in Sandy Hook Elementary did not happen. Alex Jones is one of those who has alternative facts, he says. He contests the truth of that matter on the basis of some conspiracy theories. We hear a lot today about conspiracy theories, notions that people have other information more than what we might see otherwise. There is a tendency, and I guess among all of us, to want to know some other things that nobody else knows. Why else do we have magazines for inquiring minds, the inside story, the real dirt? That seems to be attractive to many of us. But today we're having almost a national battle over what constitutes the truth. Not only do we have conspiracy groups out there with believing something different than many of us might believe, now we have alternative news sources. We have everything from Fox News to the PBS News, and we have everything on the other end from this so-called QAnon group. They have their news sources, they say. We have now political leaders, civic leaders, who buy into conspiracy theories. If you heard anything recently about the Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene and her notions that not only was the 2020 presidential election stolen from Donald Trump, but there's all kinds of wild ideas, it seems to many of us, of what started forest fires in California from some satellite beam with solar energy by a Jewish group. As we think about this contentiousness about truth today, it's difficult sometimes to know how we're going to determine or find established facts even. Misinformation and disinformation add to the problem. Many of those who look at the issue about established truth also point to the fact that many people now get their information, their truths, their facts from social media. Without doing much fact checking at all, they rely on what somebody else says is the truth. And truth now has become, for many people, subjective, but it's also been weaponized. My truth is better than your truth. And this becomes even more difficult when we get into moral and political issues and questions. So how do you separate out facts from fiction, truth from falsehoods. The Pew Research Center here notes in its surveys that in America's highly politically polarized landscape, knowing what is true and what is real has become really a threat to our form of democracy. We could simply look at the insurrection at our nation's capital on January the 6th to see that some people were working out of what they believed was the truth. The election was stolen. Part of the truth problem, I think, can be found in the shift that's occurred from established journalistic practices and outlets to these alternative news sources. I sometimes just look to see what other news sources are saying, aside from CNN or PBS or some of the others that I watch. This One America News is probably a clear example, along with Fox News, of what other people are listening to and are receiving their information and their facts from these sources. No longer do we have Sergeant Joe Friday, who used to be on Dragnet, who would always interrupt a witness or someone they were interviewing and say, "No, ma'am, I only want to know the facts. Just give me the facts." Facts are critical to knowing the truth. In a Washington Post article written shortly before the end of President Trump's presidency, George Conway III made an interesting statement. He said, "Today, finding the truth is a difficult process, that we as human beings tend to want to believe what we think is true." And that he said, he quoted the late Senator Patrick Moynihan, who famously said that everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but they're not entitled to their own facts. So how do we move through this difficult time with truth when it's compounded by tribal allegiances or with worldviews and ideologies, and want to believe those that stack up or align with our worldviews and allegiances? Suddenly, science and global warming are now being contested by some because they don't believe the science is true. All of us could probably agree that telling hard and inconvenient truths has never been easy. Truth telling requires some kind of social trust. We have to believe in one another to some degree, that each other are telling the truth based on facts and evidence. But that's not the case today. In fact, out of the concern for our nation's health and institutions, the RAND Corporation, a couple of years ago, embarked on a study that they entitled "Truth Decay in America." They went about trying to say, what's happened to truth in America these days? Here's what they found. First of all, they said there's an increasing disagreement between fact and opinion. Then they said the analytical interpretations have drifted away from facts and data, more alignment with worldviews or ideologies. And there's an increasing volume and resulting numbers of opinion makers. And then they said determining trust in formerly respected sources of facts has declined. And they say these trends are really unprecedented in American history, at least in the disagreement over objective truth and facts. So the RAND Corporation thinks that we have to contend today, if you're looking for truth, with what's called cognitive biases that we all may have. And we have to be careful about listening to things that are repeated through social media. And they say that our educational system today needs to point more to what they call critical thinking, looking at a lot of different sources, checking out assumptions that are being made, looking for more facts and data. So, how do you go about this free and responsible search for truth and meaning with all of this misinformation, disinformation, alternative facts swirling around us all the time? Well, there are several places that we can look to find some people working in that direction. A number of years ago, South Africa, after the apartheid experience there, decided that the only way to move forward was to tell the truth, the whole truth, about what racism had done in their country for generations. They formed what's called a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And they brought people together to talk about what happened back then in 1970s, 80s, that people experienced. Not only the elite, not only the people in charge with the power, but the people who suffered the brunt of a lot of what had been done by the government. And they wanted to let everybody tell their story. And after the telling of their stories, they asked the groups to start making some conclusions on the basis of all of those stories. As that was important, they discovered, for healing what had happened in the past. That Truth and Reconciliation Commission concept has come to these United States. It took place in Greensboro, North Carolina, to deal with the 1979 massacre of peaceful civil rights protesters by the Ku Klux Klan. They tried to come to terms with what really happened from a lot of different perspectives. It's still a challenge today, and I want us to kind of dig a little deeper. How do we, people who want to be concerned about this free and responsible search for truth and meaning, how do we go about that? What are the criteria we use to establish truth when there are so many different opinions among us? I'll tell you a story about this as a way of inviting you to think about this a little more carefully with me. About 7, 8 years ago, when I arrived in Sun City, I was invited to be a part of a new club that was established for residents in the community. It was called the Current Issues Club. The idea was for us to come together several times a month to talk about whether it's international, national, state, or local issues in the news. We didn't want it to be partisan, so the mission was stated very carefully to have a nonpartisan environment to discuss these issues for deeper understanding of the issues. We put together a structure for the meetings. We had small groups that generated a lot of just ideas. They'd come together and just talk and throw out ideas. That group would winnow them down to 1 or 2 or 3. They would in turn present those to the larger club meeting, which would select one topic for the following month. And that topic would be given to a research team. And the research team's job was to take the topic and go prepare a 2 or 3 page, what they call background paper, basic information. Go look at some sources and give us some data, help us frame the topic, what makes it controversial, not to take a position, just to put the basic information there, the context. Well, it went along really well for a number of years. People really appreciated the fact that we had this information background paper, because not everybody came as well prepared to discuss any particular topic as others. So we found it to be a real helpful piece. But then a year or so ago, we started having a member or two joining the club and saying, well, wait a minute, we don't agree with the information in your research background papers. We think that they're too heavily slanted to a liberal perspective. We think that their science on global warming is not conclusive, that this 97% of scientists agree is overblown, way overblown. We have other sources that we want to contend that the Earth is actually moving through a cooling period, not getting warmer. There's scientific evidence for that. You don't want to hear that evidence, they said. Well, that put the club in a little bit of a quandary. So now we've had to stop and ask ourselves, what are the criteria that we will ask our research committee to use in developing these informational background papers? How will we determine what is really true? What are the facts? It's been a challenge. The research teams had to work often to talk about what they see as criterion, each criteria that we might want to have to establish the truth or to document the facts in a particular issue or its context. So I want to simply ask you today, if you were invited to serve on this research committee to establish these criteria for what would determine real, truthful, accurate information, data, to frame any particular subject, what would you include in that list of criteria? What would you offer and say this is essential for establishing the truth? That's the challenge that I believe that we all face, but especially those of us who are part of this tradition, who are saying that we are supporting the free and responsible search for truth in meeting today. Let us all attend to that challenge in the most earnest way we can.
The light of inspiration's flame shines on within our hearts. Extinguished here, illumined there, in service love imparts. To welcome all, to answer need, to search for truth where it may lead. To honor faith with dignity, this is our humble creed. This is our only creed.
As we end our reflection today on this free and responsible search for truth and meaning, I leave you with these thoughts. Seeking the truth and telling the truth require a common commitment to the common good within the bonds of trust. Falsehood undermine those bonds of trust, and it's such they undermine the search for truth. As Charles Spurgeon, the great 19th century preacher, liked to say to his audiences, a lie can travel all the way around the world before truth can put on its shoes. In our search for truth, I commend to you these points from the RAND Corporation's Truth Decay report. In addition to taking an interdisciplinary approach to research, they also suggest that we call for social media content legislation and to advocate for civil discourse and engagement with the facts and the evidence and with sources. The RAND report also encourages citizens to think about critical thinking and how to navigate informational highways to fact-check claims for credible evidence, and they provide some examples. So the search for truth is a challenge for all of us to do these things: to learn uncontested facts, to look for reliable sources of information, to suspend premature judgments about people and events, and to recognize that truth is rarely pure and simple.